Oh boy, it's been a long time since I've made a comment response video. And it's not like I was lacking in opportunities to make one, as you probably know if you've been around here for a while. I make a lot of controversial videos, and my latest one was no exception. So why did I finally decide to make another one of these videos? Well, partially because I didn't have anything to work on this week. But more importantly, because usually when I get a lot of dislikes, I'll at least have some rational comments that explain some major mistake I made with the video, or at least have a different, much more positive take that maybe on some level I can agree with. Well, not this time. I did not find a single comment refuting any of my major points from the video. I am deeply disappointed with Sony fans this time. If this is the best defense you can muster for the game of the year of 2022, according to you, then gaming is truly dead and it's never going to improve. Because you consumers keep eating this shit up.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
So because I'm feeling charitable at the moment, I will start with the more reasonable issues that were brought up with the video, and then get to the less reasonable ones, to put it lightly. Probably the most reasonable criticism of my video is the simple factual inaccuracy I made around the first Berserker boss battle. It is not, in fact, mandatory. You can actually just walk right past it. So why did I think it was mandatory? Well, a few reasons. One, my brain was completely fried at this point in the stream. This was about 20 hours into the game, and I was so unbelievably bored by the game that I had trouble paying attention a lot of the time. So when you come across this fight, it is literally on your linear path to the end of the level. It is right before the end of the second Svartalfheim visit. So when both Kratos and Freya comment on this boss battle right in front of you, that made it seem like it was mandatory. Now, obviously, in my brain, I must have hallucinated the main objective marker over it, because clearly it's not there, but it is in fact optional. You can just walk right past it. So here's the question. Does this actually matter? Not really, no. It doesn't take away from any of my other points about the boss battle, how it's a very obvious difficulty spike, and no, it doesn't matter that it's optional because it's placed directly in front of you. How many people are gonna fight this boss and then just quit and leave? I would hope nobody, because for all the comments I saw about me having a skill issue, or mad cuz bad, or whatever stupid Zoomer gotcha variation we're using this month, I actually beat the boss without quitting. Placing an optional super boss right in front of the player means that you're expected to be able to take him at this point. My issues with the boss have not changed whether or not he's optional. He has too much health and too small a moveset given how much health he has for what point of the game you're expected to fight him. Now let's get to a comment that I agree with in spirit, but it really wasn't my point in the video. At 44 minutes and 30 seconds, I said this. And yet more evidence that the writers emasculated Kratos. He never tries to kill Odin here. Even if it wasn't out of rage, which it would be, if he killed Odin, the plot would be over and he would win. I'm not saying he should win here, but he should at least try to kill Odin. He shouldn't just fucking stand there and get roasted and say nothing in return. Come the fuck on. And so this commenter said, I mean, Atreus was still in Asgard, so if Kratos tries to kill Odin in this scene, then Atreus would likely be killed by the gods in Asgard. Yes, absolutely, I agree. But that doesn't mean that the writers had to handle it this way. The problem is, a lot of these comments are treating it as if this game's story was written in stone, it could never be changed, or they don't want to address how it was written at all. And so instead of addressing my criticisms of the writers themselves, these comments just say, well, that's what happens in the story. Didn't you see what happened in the story? Yes, and I disagree with it. I think it's horrible. That's my point. Wouldn't it be way more interesting if Odin actually pissed Kratos off and he made a mistake? I think so, instead of just watching another slow-paced, pointless cutscene that we learn nothing of value from, and it just wastes our time, like most of this game. So yes, while I agree with you in spirit, the problem is the situation itself. This is just another scene that exists just to make us hate Odin more, even though there was already a shit ton of those. And it once again further assassinates Kratos' character development. Yeah, that's a good one. How can you even call it character development if it happens off-screen in between God of War 3 and 4? I mean, just imagine if we actually did get a boss battle here, and Odin was too strong for Kratos, and just makes a mockery of him, just wipes the floor with him, and then just laughs it off and goes back to Asgard and continues using his son. Wouldn't that be way more interesting than what actually happened? Yes, it would be. Honestly, it would be even more interesting if Kratos did kill Odin and his son did get killed as a consequence. And then Kratos has to grieve Atreus and come to realize that he is trapped in a cycle of vengeance. In fact, there is a line in the game already that basically says this.
Justice is not what we seek. It is vengeance. Every path I walk leads back to vengeance.
But you guys don't want interesting writing. You want your Marvel cape shit, generic baby subversion that has no real consequences, instead of actually interesting, dramatic moments in the story. You'd rather have characters talk about their emotions 10 more fucking times. And the sad part is, this is probably the most reasonable criticism I got, at least of the story. Because even though I made several other factual inaccuracies in the video, the people who wrote these comments made a lot of bad faith arguments and suggestions around my intent or implications of those points in the video. Here's an example. The reason Kratos denies Odin's so-called peace treaty at the start is probably because he's learnt the hard way never to make a deal with a god, especially one he knows to be referred to as a manipulator and backstabber. Now, the first time you read this, you might not think this is a particularly bad comment. He makes a good point, and he wrote it in a fairly neutral fashion, right? And actually, this is the comment that inspired me to make this video in the first place, because I realized I didn't explain all my points in the video all that well, and there is a reason for that. The way I make video game reviews is different from most other people. There are generally two types on YouTube. There are the mainstream reviewers that give very vague praises and criticisms toward the game. They're typically the ones that get review codes and then release their videos as soon as the embargo is up to maximize views. I'm sure all of you can picture at least one person on this platform that's like this. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, the Joseph Andersons or Matthew Matosis or maybe H. Bomber Guy or something, who will spend a month working on a video, writing the script, making sure it's airtight, having all their points organized and together, and these videos are usually over 2 hours long. Now, I am somewhere in the middle. My videos are much longer than the vague mainstream reviewers, but they're also shorter and far less organized than the video essay YouTubers, right? Because the way I make videos is I just give you my unfiltered thoughts. Now, unfortunately, this will lead to a lot of factual inaccuracies, and it has over the course of the nearly 3 years I've made content. Because I don't really care to do research, I do most things based on notes and my own memory. I corrected some of the mistakes I made in the video itself. And I'm not saying this to say that you can't point out factual inaccuracies. You certainly can. Just know I'm never going to change how I make my content because I don't care enough about YouTube videos to write this massive airtight script for something people are going to forget in a week anyway. Because that's the fact most content creators don't want to accept, is that YouTube content is extremely disposable. And that's how I've always treated it. I give my opinion and I move on to the next thing, whether or not people agree with it. So to get back to this comment, I actually already wrote a response, so I will read out my response and then further flesh out my point in detail. See, these are the types of comments that warrant response videos. At no point did I imply Kratos should trust Odin. That would make no sense. But you knew that. You knew I knew that. But it's easier to attack one of the weaker arguments of the video instead of defend against my more significant criticisms. That said, I will concede I didn't explain my point here very well, so I'll explain it better. If Kratos truly wanted to avoid bloodshed, he had only one choice: accept the peace treaty. That doesn't mean he has to trust Odin or let Freya die. Obviously, he would have to find a way to avoid Odin's ravens, but ideally, he would try to save Freya immediately after accepting the treaty, and she still wouldn't forgive him, but it would be a step in the right direction. Now, obviously, you would have to rewrite a lot of the plot to make this work, but you could probably still work in the Tyr twist, so Odin would know of Kratos breaking the treaty. Then Odin would pretend to not know to get Atreus to complete the mask. It's not a perfect fix, but at least Kratos wouldn't be constantly moaning about not wanting war. I don't care enough to make a video rewriting the plot, but I'm sure someone on this platform will. So the point I'm trying to get at here is that I didn't actually care whether or not Kratos accepted the treaty. My point was, he's constantly bitching and moaning about not wanting war as the god of war. You know, one of the major points of Rian Johnson-esque subversion in the story. And it just gets annoying and repetitive and tiresome after a while. Now on to the next criticism. The reason why he lost all his shit is explained in-game. The reason Freya never came to their house is because of the stave which stops other people from coming inside. It's like this guy didn't pay attention. See, here's another arrogant comment that completely misses the points in the video. Obviously, there's an explanation for why Kratos lost his equipment. Me saying in the video, for some reason, was me poking fun at Metroidvania games for taking away all your equipment at the beginning. They always find some dumb reason, and God of War Ragnarok is no exception. I don't care whether or not there is a reason. It was a criticism of the game design to start you at square one again. And just saying that Fimbulwinter destroyed their stuff is fucking stupid, let's be real. I am of the belief that you don't have to start the player off with zero equipment, because you should make a sequel assuming people played the previous game. And if they didn't, they can catch up to the mechanics eventually. Just make the early game encounters easy enough that you can still get by if you don't use runic attacks or riposts or any of the other mechanics. Kratos should feel like he's getting stronger, not that he was forcefully pushed back to where he was at the start of the last game. Because it's one of the many elements of this game that makes it feel more like a giant expansion than an actual sequel. And I'm not going to get into a debate about what makes a good sequel versus just an iterative, lazy, Ubisoft-esque $70 expansion. But let's just say Ragnarok did not meet my expectations of a sequel. And you're free to have your own opinion on that. I really don't care. Now, as to your second point, I did write a response comment to this as well that I will read out. Maybe you should try listening to the video before you make presumptuous comments like this. At no point did I say Freya should break into their front door and challenge Kratos directly, or kill him in his sleep, I guess. How does that make any sense? The point is, she could easily plan a better assassination than fly in bird form from above and try to get a surprise attack in, especially after likely 3 years of attempts. Freya is a super powerful mage and warrior, aka a Mary Sue, and that's the best she could do? Really? Now I understand why everybody makes 3-hour videos these days, because unless you explain every point you make in detail, someone will attempt a gotcha instead of applying any critical thinking. Why do you think Freya had only 2 options? And yeah, I don't think I need to expand on this comment any further. I think I put it pretty succinctly here. Now let's get to the minor story corrections crowd, aka the actually people. I think I found the perfect comment that encapsulates pretty much all of them. I'm going to respond to each of these point by point because it just makes more sense that way. I feel like the reviewer missed so many things, some of which was painfully obvious. The point of the wolf race was to cheer Angrboda up after the sad encounter with her grandmother. Atreus literally states that. At no point did I imply I didn't know this was the case. That's pretty obvious. This doesn't change the fact that it is a tonal whiplash after what is supposed to be a very sad scene. The statement I made during the stream is perfect. I wouldn't change anything about it. What a tonal whiplash after that emotional scene. It's like we're not allowed to feel sad for more than 2 seconds. So really the purpose of the scene doesn't matter. It's still bad. I'm still right. So I don't even know why you wrote this. Freya couldn't attack them because of the protection staves. That's pretty much clearly stated. Like I said, I already addressed this. The problem isn't that she didn't show up at their front door to attack them, it's that she had no plan and didn't use her vast magical ability to assist her in some way. Freya did not just randomly become a Valkyrie, she's always been a Valkyrie. While this is actually correct, the fact that anyone remembers this from 4 years ago is deeply depressing to me. I know autists will obsess over anything and remember every last minor detail, but yeah, this one was so minor and so out of nowhere and just didn't fit at all that I just blocked it from my brain, I guess. And once again, it doesn't change my point, which was Freya is a Mary Sue. Not only is she a super powerful mage, but she's also a super powerful warrior who can take on Kratos. And on top of that, the story is constantly telling us how horrible Kratos was in his past, and how all the things he did was wrong, but everything Freya has done and does in this game is right. You clearly saved the boar in the first game. Once again, who the hell would remember this and why? It doesn't matter in the least, and yet again, that does not change my point that he becomes a random fucking black guy who does nothing of value in this game. That was the clear point. Again, for someone who says I didn't pay attention to the story, you clearly didn't pay attention to my video. This is in the lore entries, so missing it makes a little sense, but Kratos states that he refused Odin's offer not because he wanted war, but more because he didn't trust him. No shit, dude. I mean, really? The point was, he constantly says he doesn't want war, but he effectively made a declaration of war and didn't think of any other way to accept Odin's deal while also working against him. Odin is meant to look old and frail. He's not the MCU version. He's meant to be deceiving and manipulative. I don't even necessarily disagree with this. It's more just a wider statement about how the Norse gods are all kind of pathetic rednecks. That the game is trying to make a statement that even the gods are human. Look, they have human flaws, which makes them more relatable. Why do characters have to be relatable? Why do gods, of all things, have to be relatable? Isn't it more refreshing to have some divine, supreme being that is hard to understand because they've always been better than everyone else? Kind of like how they wrote Heimdall, actually, which is probably why he was my favorite character. Having the gods all be losers is just kind of depressing, I don't know. It feels deeply cynical even in a way that's hard for me to comprehend, but I don't think most people think about it that way. They just like the fact that the gods are human just like us. Well, I don't. Personally, I hate it. Faye's dreams are partly to show their time together and to show how she is still trying to push him to do what she wants. Again, this doesn't even matter to the story at all. The culmination of the 3 flashbacks, or visions, whatever they are, is for Kratos to tell his son that he should feel bad for the things he kills. He should have empathy for every living creature in the world.
What's wrong, Atreus? I was wrong. Open your heart. Open your heart to their suffering. That is your mother's wish. And mine as well.
Fucking Kratos, of all people, says this. That is possibly the most defining moment of character assassination. I'm actually kind of annoyed at myself that I brushed over it. So thanks for reminding me of another horrible scene from the end of the game. While I do think Angrboda's grandmother was a little strange, I'm pretty sure Angrboda explains the reasoning behind it. She's taking the souls for the experiences of the animals, which I think they implied she grew addicted to. I noticed you're completely brushing over the woke cringe factor here, which was, once again, obviously my point of the video, so you pretty much proved me correct. I knew not a single leftist would touch this shit with a 10-foot pole at the fear of coming across as a racist, so I accept your concession. Angrboda may not want Atreus to tell anyone because Odin has a large amount of power everywhere else. You're constantly tracking down his crows, and the twist further solidifies how much he knew. Any mention of it to anyone bore risk. Okay, but why doesn't Atreus just tell Kratos in private when it's only them in the room in Sindri's place? As far as we know, Odin's ravens can't see through walls, and if Tyr, aka Odin, was listening through the door, you don't think anyone else in the house would have noticed? And again, you're brushing over the actual point. that it exists to create more emotional drama between father and son. That was clearly the writer's intent, but again, you're ignoring that. He does not respond to or attack Odin because that is clearly what Odin wants. That's why he's subtly taunting and insulting him. Again, no shit. Do you really think I didn't understand that? That doesn't matter. Sometimes doing what the villain wants and giving in is interesting. Kratos is known to be quick to anger, at least he used to be. He used to lash out at everything that pissed him off. That was one of his defining traits. This doesn't make him look more mature, it just makes him look like a pussy. That was my point. And again, the scene just could have ended far more interestingly than it did. Now, normally this is where I would end the video, but just as I was getting into the editing process, I was made aware of a response video made by ZeroNeedsCoffee called The Worst God of War Ragnarok Review Synthetic Man. As you can imagine, I was having flashbacks to my Doom Eternal videos and the responses that followed. And I won't lie, when I saw this on stream, I was pretty tilted. So I'm gonna try to give a little bit more of a measured response here and maybe be a little bit more charitable, a little bit less hostile and insulting, which is not exactly my forte, but this is a smaller YouTuber, and to be frank with you, I'm not even sure I'm talking to an adult here. So I'm going to dial back my responses accordingly. And this kind of goes without saying, but please do not go to this video and harass this person. The last thing I need is another reason for YouTube to shut my ass down. So if you guys could just control yourselves, I'd appreciate it. So without further ado, let's get into this.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Zero. Welcome back to the channel. This was kind of weird because it's been like a little over 2 weeks since I even worked on a long form video, since I've just really been focusing on shorts content.
Well, this is not a good start. This person thinks that 9 minutes is a long video, and it's a 9-minute response to an over hour-long review, so you know it's gonna be good. I'm sure these were some very well thought out responses, not at all rushed for maximum searchability in the algorithm. No, who would ever do that?
In the time that I was focusing on that though, a game reviewer YouTuber named Synthetic Man posted this video about God of War Ragnarok. And in this video, he basically just goes on and on about how the game is emasculating him and how the game is so woke because there's strong female characters, and it's just some of the funniest shit I've ever seen.
God, this comes across as some kind of feminist torture fantasy. What the fuck? See, the weird thing is, I can't tell if he thinks it's funny because of how absurd it is or because of the way I said that line. At least I thought it was funny. And I notice he cut out the line in question that was super cringe. Let me just remind you.
Bow to your queen!
Seems kinda dishonest, don't you think? And one of my fans told me this person is actually anti-woke, and they didn't have a single problem with Freya being such a blatant Mary Sue. So obviously this guy doesn't have very strong principles, or is a liar, as are many people on YouTube. Also, I'm not the only one who sees the irony in him mocking me for thinking the game is emasculating him, while he's using an effeminate twink Rule 63 version of Marceline from Adventure Time as his avatar. I mean, come on, man. Have some self-awareness.
Video is going to be extremely spoiler heavy. Like, literally every plot detail about the game is going to be explained and spoiled. So if you haven't played the game yet, I recommend you go check it out. But if you're not able to play it or have an Xbox or something, then you can also check out a video like this, like a full game, no commentary video. I highly recommend you go do that. Don't watch this video. Go experience the game first and then come back.
Instead of, you know, playing the game yourself or just waiting until you could get a PS5, he suggests that you watch a full game walkthrough. And the part he's leaving out is when you then pretend you've played the game yourself and have a real opinion on it. Are you fucking kidding me, dude? I hate Zoomers so much. Half of this game is either watching a cutscene, walking in a straight line, or engaging in one of the game's many hidden loading screens, whether that be rowing a boat, riding a giant yak, climbing a wall, shit we've seen 1,000 times, and it gets old.
So this dude is pretty much saying that half of the game is running around, talking to people, watching cutscenes, and exploring the world. Isn't that half of what pretty much every video game is?
Okay, when he first said this blew my fucking mind. Let me just play a clip from the stream.
Pretty much every video game is. I've
What?
never really heard anyone.
What? There are so many things wrong with this statement, I don't even know where to begin. The fact that you think that half of every game ever made is cutscenes or talking to people or quote-unquote exploring the world, which is not at all what I meant by that statement, and you know it. Rowing around in a boat is not playing the game. You only use the left analog stick to control it. Shit, I could just use a fucking game from this year, Elden Ring. All of the Souls games, the vast majority of them is gameplay. A lot of my favorite games ever made are almost entirely gameplay focused. The Spyro trilogy, the Crash trilogy, Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, which I just played on stream. Half-Life 2 is almost entirely gameplay. In fact, pretty much every game made before the 3D era was 99% gameplay. Seriously, just look up any Super Nintendo or Genesis game. It's all gameplay. You have to think before you speak, dude. I know this is coming across as incredibly condescending, but this is the most brain-dead statement I think I've ever seen in any game video. I am not exaggerating, I'm serious. This one just doesn't make any sense if you even think about it for 2 seconds.
I've never really heard anyone complain about a game before because the reason they didn't like it was that 50% of the game was walking around, watching cutscenes, and exploring the world. Like, imagine returning this game to GameStop and the cashier is like, why don't you like the game? And you say it's because 50% of it is watching cutscenes and running around. The dude would probably think you're mentally ill.
Honestly, if I was working for GameStop and someone said that to me, I would give them a refund with no questions asked. In fact, I would shake his hand and call him a motherfucking Chad in front of the whole store, dude. Someone needs to fucking say it. This game does not respect your time. And
just like you're not respecting the game's story. You put this section in 8 times speed as if it's a loading screen or something. This is a very touching scene where Kratos talks to his now dead wife in a dream. And you're just skipping over it like it's literally nothing.
Oh wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
I don't even think I need to clarify my point any further here. This is a deep and emotional scene to a Sony fanboy. Holy shit. Kratos just mysteriously has lost almost all of his abilities and gear from the last game. And so the game kind of feels afraid to give you all of the combat mechanics until about 10 hours in.
Okay, so I guess this guy is upset that all of his abilities and gear that he had unlocked in God of War 2018 didn't transfer over to this game. You wanted Kratos to start the game looking like this? That's not possible because the developers have no clue what you unlocked in the last game. And even if they did, everyone should start from the same point. This is even explained in-game.
What happened to all the armor we made you already?
I used it.
Well, maybe try to make this one last longer.
I will not.
And the game also explains why Kratos doesn't have any of his abilities or gear from the original trilogy.
This is such an awful straw man, I don't even know where to begin. I already addressed some of this earlier in the video, so if you're one of this guy's fans, I will give you the timestamp to when I address the starting with nothing point. But as to your other point, I never implied Kratos should have any of his original abilities. I also never implied the game should read your save file to know what you unlock. That doesn't make sense either. Why do you view everything so black and white? You don't have to start with literally nothing, and you also don't have to start with all of your stuff from the last game. My point was, this game has no sense of progression. It feels like an expansion pack of the last game, because you have the same starting equipment and abilities as the last game, except thankfully you get the Blades of Chaos pretty early on. But even a lot of the runic attacks are the same fucking ones from the last game. The fucking God of War can't block a random fire skeleton's axe swing. My immersion is destroyed.
So do you want him to be fucking invincible? It's still a video game. It still has to present some challenge. And if you fuck up, there still has to be a losing condition.
Again, this is an idiotic straw man. You argue only in extremes, dude. Just think about it for 2 seconds. It's called suspense of disbelief. Did I need to use the actual term for you to understand it, man? It has nothing to do with gameplay mechanics. It's literally just suspense of disbelief, and mine was destroyed multiple times.
And when you apply that logic to any other game, it just sounds stupid. How can the legendary crime fighter Batman die to a random thug's punch? How can the superhumanly powerful Doomslayer die to a random projectile from a demon? This sucks. Immersion ruined. Like, this dude has literally no understanding of how video games work.
The fucking arrogance of this guy to say, I don't understand video games. I would bet any amount of money I played twice as many as you have, and likely far more than that across my life. He reused almost every enemy type from the first game. And I mean exact same animations and attacks.
Oh my god, the game takes place in the same world as the last game. It's gonna have some of the same enemies.
Okay, this is how I know this guy's a retard. You just argued that I don't know how video games work, and then you just made a meta argument for why in-universe the same enemies would appear. You're a moron. I'm just gonna say it. I don't care if I get in trouble for mocking you. You deserve to be mocked for a statement like this. Why didn't the old God of War games reuse every enemy type then? It was Greece. It would have the same enemies, right? Because it's fucking lazy. It makes the game feel like the last game. Have you never played a sequel in your life? This is the absolute state of gamers, dude. This is why I have no respect for anyone who buys and plays modern games and actually enjoys them. Between games, Atreus and Kratos have literally just been hiding in their house, waiting for the world to end. I wish I was fucking joking.
Dude, no. Kratos even explains this in-game.
Not hide. We prepare for a fight for which we are not ready.
Like, dude, Kratos literally fucking says it in the game. They're training for when the gods eventually find where they're hiding out and attack them. They're not doing nothing.
Oh, they trained. Oh, so what are the results of their labor? If they were training so hard, wouldn't they start with more abilities than they had in the last game? They wouldn't start at level 1 with level 1 equipment, right? They wouldn't just stick with the same equipment and abilities if they were training so hard for 3 years, right? Turns out that Freya has been trying to kill Kratos for the last 4 years, but despite knowing exactly where he lives, she somehow has failed every time.
There's a protective force field called a stave around their home, which is stopping her from getting in. That's literally where they're going when they're running from her at the beginning of the game.
Again, this is a straw man. I never said she should come to the front door and kill them. I already explained this point earlier. Here's the timestamp. And God, I just fucking hate this design. Anyone who says he looks like a strongman has never actually seen a strongman. Even Eddie Hall at his fattest had more muscle definition than this.
What the fuck are you talking about? There's a lot of strong men that look like Thor.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give my stream reaction for this one. This is the most Dunning-Kruger shit I've seen in a long time. You can't see the difference between these two pictures? You put that in your video! You put it in your fucking video! I'm mad. Look at his chest. Look at the arms. And lots of strongman, and he literally just shows Eddie Hall, which was the fattest. Eddie Hall bulked up to like 430 pounds for that or something like that. And at 6'2", and a half. Again, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh my, but people who don't lift will tell you this is, I don't see the difference. It looks like the same guy. Yeah, dials. Absolute dials. Odin came to offer peace. Kratos refuses, which might as well be a declaration of war.
Dude, no. In the last game, it's a really strong plot point that Odin is a manipulator and lies to get things that he wants. I love how he conveniently didn't show the part where Mimir was accusing him of lying and explaining to Kratos how manipulative he is and not to believe him.
Again, here's the timestamp where I explain my position on that.
It's fine if he keeps
Just
secrets.
slap your
It's fine if
son.
Mom did.
Fucking slap him.
Her secrets ought to be stuck with this path.
Oh, okay.
The pussy ass writers. Like, do you know how many dads would fucking bitch slap their sons if they spoke to them like that?
If Kratos bitch slapped Atreus, he would probably fucking die. He's the god of war.
Once again, my stream reaction to this was perfect. Okay, this is parody, right? This must be parody. Because that sounded like a joke. I mean, that sounds like something I would say.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. This video is over an hour long, and I don't really see any point in going over the rest of the video. I just wanted to take a look at the most outlandish points and explain them, because this review is really bad. Like, this is really, really bad. It's obvious that this dude didn't like the game before he played it. And he just went into it, looked at the whole story at face value, and just doesn't even really understand what's going on.
And once again, the most tired leftist argument of all. He just hated the game before he even played it. Oh really? Then why did I like the last game? Yeah, I thought it was a bit overrated, but I thought it was a somewhat refreshing take on God of War. I was annoyed by one particular scene in that game, which I bring up in the review that I guess you just skipped around in because you just couldn't bring yourself to react to the rest, I guess. And again, you made an 8-minute reaction to an 1 and 5 minute long video. You used maybe 5 minutes at most of my video and then call it a horrible video. So if anything, the other hour of the video is really awesome if it's not worth even commenting on. That sounds like a great video to me. But no, I guess because I made a couple points that you people didn't understand because I didn't explain myself that well, which I admitted earlier, then I guess it's a bad video. Or here's an idea, you're a fucking fanboy with your head up your ass, you have really shit taste in video games because you haven't played any really good games, evidently, and you certainly haven't played any games that are primarily gameplay. I mean, that point was absolutely absurd, dude, come on. I literally just streamed Dead Space 1 one more time before Callisto Protocol comes out, and guess what? That game is like 80% gameplay, even when you're not fighting enemies. You're engaging in some kind of puzzle room, and the puzzles are much more creative than God of War Ragnarok's. And even when there is a cutscene, guess what? You have control over your fucking character while the video logs are playing. Because it's a video game, first and foremost. You're supposed to play them, not watch them. Why is this so hard for you to understand? From 1980 all the way until like 2005, the vast majority of video games had minimal cutscenes. All of the ones that had excessive story were notable for that, because the vast majority of games didn't have more than an hour of cutscenes across the entire game. It's only in the past 10 years that games have had more and more cutscenes, which you would know if you actually played video games, which I don't think you do, which means you have no authority to talk about games. And you clearly haven't seen many of my videos where I've talked about games I like that are obviously primarily gameplay focused. So again, this is an embarrassment. You should absolutely feel ashamed of yourself that you shit this video out without thinking about it for more than 2 seconds. But no, you're going to continue to churn out content and slowly accrue more and more subscribers because YouTube doesn't care about quality, it only cares that you cover trending topics. Which I'll admit is something I've done myself many times over the past 3 years. It is a necessary evil to gain any traction on this website, but holy hell, this was a bad video, dude. You say my review is bad? You didn't even think out half your points for this, man, and it was only 9 minutes long. So hopefully you take something from this, but considering how insulting I was, I honestly doubt it. And I have no plans to make another response video in case some responses to my review blow up. The only way I might consider it is if that person also watches this video and how I clarify my points from that review, and if they still have arguments to my revised points, then maybe I'll consider it. But honestly, I would rather just review Callisto Protocol and make a video on the Game Awards, which I have no doubt Ragnarok will sweep all of them, because it's all been rigged fucking forever, just like any other game show. But if this is the best that Sony fanboys have to offer to refute my video, you failed. Like, you colossally failed. Because pointing out minor story details I got wrong is the equivalent of being a grammar Nazi. Sure, maybe I learned a thing or two, and maybe I'll do a little bit more research for future videos, but not a single one of these points refutes any argument I made in the video. Not a single argument I made in the video has been refuted about it being a giant fucking movie game, about it being woke as fuck, about the combat being too similar to the last one, which I actually pulled my punches on that. I didn't make that a big point. I did in my original draft, but I decided to be nice and mostly stay positive for the combat section. About Kratos' character assassination, about Atreus being an effeminate cuck, about Freya being a Mary Sue, none of these things were refuted. These are all the most important criticisms of the game. And then there's the lack of gore, there's the Marvel movie ripoff shit. There's the fact that this game is clearly made for people who don't actually enjoy video games, which is why you're not even playing the game the majority of the time. But if you love movies, if you love staring at the fucking screen, not touching the controller except when a fake QuickTime event comes up, then you'll love this, I guess. Game of the Year 2022, right? So I honestly have no idea how to end this video. Synthetic Man wins, commenters lose again, big surprise. I'm the greatest. See you next time, guys.